Sometimes I need a little help remembering not to judge a book by its cover, like I imagine we all do. I, for example, was deeply confused when the movie Hot Fuzz was in fact rated R rather than X, but this was conspicuously not the case when I played Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. I'm sure most of you remember the time when this game was all over YouTube Let's Plays and the like for its gradual turn from cutesy to horrific. Thusly, I kinda knew what to expect from good old Spook, but does it measure up? Let's find out. I would usually start the review by talking about the story in very broad terms, but that seems to be the only term that there are in this game story-wise. You are John Eric, just your average player stand-in who loves history and hates talking out loud. You live in a town with a mysterious mansion on the hill, and one day you decide to break into it with no supplies, cell phone, friends, food, etc., and you meet a 12-year-old ghost girl named Spooky, who does not show you her Sonic OC's DeviantArt page or top 10 favorite anime YouTube countdown, but rather invites you to travel through the 1,000 rooms of randomly generated Halloweeny fun, and challenges you to find the end, which might not exist. Halloweeny fun, by the way, is exactly the way to describe most of this game in my opinion. Even at its most disturbing, it manages to capture some of my favorite elements of horror in general, as well as the more lighthearted things earlier on. The whole game is spent traveling from room to room, and with minor, sometimes totally harmless spooks starting off the journey, and more threatening nightmare fuel being the meat and potatoes later on. And let me just say that if you like a game where most of the story is in flavor text, this game certainly fits that description, specifically with its descriptions of many of its specimens. Specimens are what the game calls its monsters, including the cute little cardboard ghosts featured at the beginning, and there's actually a good amount of flavor text describing them all pretty well, and a lot of them even have what one might describe as a creepypasta flavor to them, which I know, but it's meant as a compliment, I promise. Honestly, specimens are one of the game's strong suits. Each one is unique, and they get more and more disturbing as the game progresses, creating a feeling not entirely unlike your ex-boyfriend, who took extreme care to make sure you had more or less accepted his last gut-wrenching hardcore fetish he told you about, before revealing he was into scat and water sports as well. That, plus the pacing of the horror elements, are really the best parts of the game. And for the impatient assholes among you, yes, I recommend this game for those things alone. Oh, and it's free, so you can't really go wrong. But to be honest, even if the game had costed a common indie price, like $5 to $10 or whatever, I could still have been satisfied. Unfortunately, though, recommendations aside, I do have to give my complete opinion, and just like that cute guy from work who laughs at your jokes and wears an earrings on his right ear, there's a downside to everything. With this guy, it's that he owns a Gays for Trump t-shirt, and for Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion, it's what I will charitably call grinding. No, not level grinding like in Neverwinter or fucking DCUO or other relevant as fuck MMOs, nor do I mean to imply that the game doesn't observe the 12-inch rule with the winter formal ball at school. No, this could be called progress grinding. Almost every game I've played since, like, Super Mario Bros. For the NES has given its levels names and not numbers, much less told you exactly how many you need to complete before it's all over, and I find that that's damaged somewhat the sense of apprehension I got from most of the nearly identical randomly generated rooms. Scene 1 right-angled hallway with a cardboard cutout of a pumpkin popping out halfway through, seen them all, right? Every game needs its downtime to build nerves and the like, but here they all kind of were just so similar that unless something about a room was, like, obviously different, I kind of knew nothing was going to try and attack me. And even when they occasionally did, I had memorized the layouts of every kind of room there was so intimately that I could just dash through all of them with little fear of being caught. The result was kind of disappointing. I basically just rushed through hundreds of identical copy-paste rooms to get back to this interesting scary shit. I, as the player, should not be more interested in seeing scary things than the game is in showing me them. Surely it should be the other way around. It's like when you keep asking your parole officer if you can give them a foot massage, and they're not opposed to it, but you're clearly more into it than they are, and you're worried they might have just uncovered a skeleton in your closet without realizing. What I mean is it makes me feel desperate to be asking if I can let the game scare me, and the game should want to do that at its own. Now, the gameplay then. Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion seems to begin much as one would expect from an indie horror game, that is, virtually no gameplay aside from walking, running, pressing the use key. Despite how that sounds, I'm not really downing that. Perhaps it's because the last game I reviewed didn't even let you stand up, but I feel like just being able to interact with the world in a semi-realistic way, i.e. opening doors, typing on computers, screening calls from your annoying grandma asking when you planned on telling her that you were one of them queers, seems like enough of a game where the enjoyment is from slowly learning and discovering the game world. I'm not usually a fan of walking simulators, save for, like, the Stanley Parable and a few others, since they're basically the same as watching a movie for all you get to interact with them, but I still maintain that horror games get a bit of leeway in this area for three main reasons. 1. If well written and built, you still feel engaged in the gameplay, even if it's limited to a few generic use key situations. 2. The genre was once filled with games that were just action titles with ugly monsters in them, see The Evil Within for a modern example, and even if the genre is leaning towards saturation in the other direction now, it's still nowhere near as bad as it was at the peak, and it still feels a little refreshing. And 3. There are still stakes in the gameplay because if you fuck up, you still die, but if you're clever, you can always weasel out of death, this basically being the heart and soul of horror gameplay for this genre. That being said, there is one weapon in the game, just a hand axe, but by the time you get it, you spend so long without one that you're pretty bound to swing it as the first thing you get a chance to, since nothing in this world is more relatable or likable than Halloween decorations or dead cows hanging by chains from the ceiling. One last thing I'll touch on here is the ending. I didn't like it. Call me old-fashioned, but I prefer when games that I spend hours of my life on don't smack me in the face with their dicks for not predicting what lesson the writers were trying to teach me. Sorry if that makes me sound like an asshole, but try playing the Telltale Walking Dead games the same way you played Undertale and see if you still get the happy ending complete with friendly skeleton men and crying flowers. My point is, how was I supposed to know which basket this game was putting its eggs in? Right until the end I had no idea there were even multiple endings, and I got the worst one anyway? Fan-goddamn-tastic. For what it's worth, despite its lulls on activity, when this game decided to wake up from its 45-minute naps to give me a scare, it never felt like it was phoning it in. Specimens were interesting and effective and unique, and while they hardly meshed with the game's overall campy, cheesy tone, that was clearly deliberate, and rightfully so. I saw the disparity coming, and even I was taken in by it. Overall, you could call Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion a very indie horror game. The randomness of the rooms kind of felt like padding, but given that it was free and clearly made for more fun than anything else, I really can't hold that against it. Given everything it does have to offer, and for $0 by the way, I can say that I totally recommend Spooky's Jumpscare Mansion. Flaws aside, I think anyone who enjoys horror like I enjoy horror will find something to like about this game. Remember folks, it's about substance, not appearance. That's all for now folks. Next week I'll be reviewing a more topical game. I don't want to let out the secret, but I just hope you'll last until then. All 17 of my subscribers, that is Outlast. The next review is going to be Outlast.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom